Hello, everybody, and welcome to what is what has been termed the ESI launch for for Lagas, the Natural Capital Information and Management Hub developed through the TEVI project. Um, First of all, just a quick rundown of the agenda and some housekeeping, house in inverted commas. We're going to start off with Kevin, who's going to be setting the context for the project. And then I'm going to talk you through the development of it and the role of TEVI as a project on which I work. I'm going to do some demonstration of the website live. Hilariously, my broadband has been a bit slow today, so if it does become slow, then it is post office broadband and not our server. But hopefully it'll be all right. And then for the main part of the event, we want to open this up to the floor, so we have discussion, questions, and ideas from the floor. So it's more of an interactive session rather than just heaven forbid me talking to everybody for an hour. We are recording it, and of course, because there's quite a few of us, we've got the chat box to interact, and also there's a raise your hand function on Teams, I believe, which allows us to identify you if you want to make a comment. And of course, feel free to email me to follow up at any time. That's my email address there. So without any further ado, Kevin, were you able to kick us off?
Yep, I can do that. Thanks, Steve. I do think that starting a session at this time of day, I should have something really witty to say, but I can't think of anything. So I'm going to get... I actually want to take us back to sort of almost the establishment of the ESI, which was in large part to provide research support to Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly in addressing environmental challenges. We only got funded at the outset because we had the support of many regional bodies who were faced with that challenge of recognizing that there are lots of big environmental challenges to the region, and wanting enhanced research support to be able to address those. What that's meant is that from the outset, we've really had close relationships with many key regional bodies, government, business, NGOs, the general public. And I think we've delivered, and we continue to deliver, that research support on actually a pretty impressive scale. In fact, if one looks nationally, it's hard to find other institutes which are quite so closely involved in environmental issues in their region in quite the same way as the ESI is. The breadth of that support that we provide is just extraordinary, really. I was trying to think of just pull off some off the top, and if your particular example is not included here, then please don't take offence. But you know, we've gone from responding to Brexit to how to manage road verges. We address issues of local democracy through to what's the carbon footprint of the spaceport. We go from helping establish the environmental growth agenda to managing plastic waste, and on and on and on. Much of that regional work has been very much project focused. It's been a piece by piece, project by project exercise. And whilst you could argue that much of it influences many people, it's really focused on direct involvement with a much smaller number. Any given project is interacting directly with a relatively small number of people. And it was recognized really quite early on in the history of the ESI that what we would really like to develop would be some kind of platform that provided anyone, arguably everyone in the region, with key information about the environment of Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, about many of the projects that are going on, and about how that environment and those projects impinged on their lives, their businesses, their workplaces, etc., etc. Many issues which I guess have very much come to the fore in this period of lockdown and people kind of desperately wanting their daily walks. That need to provide environmental intelligence was reinforced by the launch of the Environmental Growth Strategy, which is a core strategy both for the council and for the region, and which the ESI was very heavily involved, and which has set I think a daunting but encouraging level of ambition for growing our environmental assets in the region. There is an ambition there, there's a target there of 30% of the land area of Cornwall being managed for positively for the growth of environmental assets by 2030. That's quite a big ask, although there's a lot of commitment around the region to delivering on that. I think the declaration of a climate emergency for Cornwall has made the need for environmental intelligence even more apparent. So what we've been able to do through funding from NERC and the SWEET programme and from the European Regional Development Fund through the TEVI project, which Steve will talk about a bit in a moment, is we've finally been able to develop the platform that we had long been aspiring to, or at least starting to put out there some of the framework of what that platform is actually going to look like. I don't think it's this isn't a finished work. This isn't a cast in stone. I imagine that in a while it may look very different from what it currently does. It's called Lagas, and I'm sure Steve will take great pleasure in telling you why it's called that. And it's basically what you're going to hear about today. What we're not doing today is summarising the end of a project. We're launching a platform that will grow and will develop through time, and which we are encouraging others, and hence we are telling you about this, to contribute to and to get involved with. It already has a key place in development planning and net gain processes with the council. So it's already providing important information to important decision makers. It's already involved in conservation planning in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. Some of you may have heard of nature recovery networks, which is part of DEFRA's 25-year plan for the environment, is to establish nature recovery networks in every region, and some of the mapping that you're going to hear about is actually directly contributing to that in the region. And it's already enrolled to some extent with Forest for Cornwall, which is another big initiative down here. So already we're starting to provide a platform which is accessible. No one is cut out from this platform. You only have to type in the address. It's accessible to everybody, but is already providing key information for decision makers and interested parties at large. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Steve, who's going to tell you what it's really about and show you what actually Lagas is. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. That was great. It really summed it up brilliantly, actually. I love the idea of it being the start, not the end of a project. So I'm just going to do this and share my screen. It's the classic Teams thing of someone saying, "Can you see my screen?" Probably not.
We can see it.
Yeah. Can you see it as in full screen, or just the Microsoft PowerPoint?
I think full screen.
Great. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, just an introduction to me. My name's Stephen Lowe. I work at on the TEVI project, the ESI, in normal times. And I'm one of the Industrial Impact Fellows on TEVI. So I work with the academics and with our businesses, our business-facing project. I work alongside other two Impact Fellows at the university on the project, including Kyle, who also is based at the ESI and works on our sensor network and cameras. So first of all, a bit of a quick intro to what TEVI is, if you've not heard of it. So TEVI is, as I say, is a business-facing project. We work with SMEs across Cornwall. We are funded by the European Regional Development Fund, and it's a partnership between the University of Exeter, Cornwall Council, Cornwall Wildlife Trust and CDC, the Cornwall Development Company. We've been running since early 2018. We've worked with about 300 businesses now across Cornwall. And this really sort of the basis of that work, as Kevin mentioned, is the environmental growth strategy, which is absolutely integral to the work that TEVI does, and in turn, of course, the work of Lagas. And this really is an extremely, as Kevin described, about the environment being in management for growth by 2030. The strategy goes to 2065, and it's a really ambitious strategy. And really, it's a really great way of combining economy, society, and the environment. Certainly, if you've not had a chance to have a leaf through the environmental growth strategy, it's certainly really interesting. Obviously, the ESI was at the heart of that, and that is at the heart of everything we do with TEVI and Lagas. Another aspect of TEVI is circular economy. It's less going to be talked about today, but we've been working with businesses on various circular economy projects, including this event here that was in Ankara in September. Okay, and a key part of the business engagement is this environmental hub idea, which has been around since the start of the project, which has now been called Lagas. And that's alongside the business support we offer to our businesses, our enterprises, building a technology network, as like people like Kyle was involved in extremely exciting work on LoRaWAN and a sensor network and camera network. Grant funding and the challenge networks, which are sort of groups that bring to get people together to address particular environmental challenges across Cornwall. So that brings me on to Lagas. So yeah, a little bit of the rationale. I mean, Kevin sort of covered a lot of this actually, but so really there is this idea that we need access to data required to inform policy. It's absolutely paramount. And Kevin mentioned about the Cornwall Council using it. There's an idea that the data is abundant, but it's not always accessible. So groups like the university or the council do have huge amounts of data, which is really useful and producing great research. The question is, how can we make that research and that data have impact in our communities? Working with businesses, working with the council, working with conservation groups, that sort of thing. There's a need to engage with businesses, policymakers, and the public over our data and over our impact. And we want to demonstrate the impact of our research and the scope of our environmental work, because we're doing so much good work in Cornwall and the wider world, of course. But it'd be great to sort of show that how we're having impact in our communities. Of course, we need the system that will benefit Cornwall and emphasises the environmental growth direction the county is taking. And a bit of a background again here. So there's a few existing mapping services out there. A really good one actually is the Cornwall Council Interactive Map, which is great for local information. It's got all the information about schools, education, transport, and the character areas there. We've also got, I'm sure everyone's familiar with Magic. This is fantastic for finding protected areas, triple SIs, rights of way information, but can be a little bit impenetrable and also fairly unknown to the public, even though it's a great resource. And of course, we've got the government data. It's an absolute trove of data, incredibly in depth, but it's totally impenetrable. So how do we take this data and present it to the public and show how we are generating this fantastic research that benefits them, and of course policymakers and businesses as well. So this is really the challenge as I see it. Can we create a usable, accessible mapping system and more focused on the environmental challenges faced by Cornwall? System to support the environmental growth strategy, demonstrate our environmental intelligence approach. And I think that's what we've built. As Kevin says, it is an ongoing project. It's something that can and will evolve. So one of the key things I must mention as a geographer is that we really wanted this to be as flexible as possible. And I think everyone who works in environmental science or geography or anything to do with environmental data or spatial data has a favorite flavor of GIS. And we straight from the start, we wanted to make sure that it was compatible with as many systems as possible. So when I started my job here, I was a committed Esri fan, ArcGIS through and through. But we make sure that we can have data from QGIS if you're using Leaflet with R, which is what I tend to use now, or KML. Those file formats can all be uploaded to Lagas through a really simple backend and presented on the website. Certainly the results with Leaflet the R package have been really, really encouraging. And we'll see some results of that shortly in the presentation and in the demo. So yeah, I mean, as Kevin mentioned as well, I mean, this sort of throws back to the earlier slide about the origin of TEVI and the partnership that TEVI is. If you sort of scratch beneath the surface about the amount of bodies that we work with at the university and that could potentially have impact in this area and on Lagas, you really unlock a cornucopia of interested parties and people with fascinating data. Of course, sweep is absolutely paramount to that. So a lot of the data on Lagas is produced by by people like Jonathan Mosedale. Absolutely fantastic environmental data and maps of future climate change scenarios and environmental growth scenarios that are really interesting. We've got things like the Cornwall Sustainability Awards, which can be mapped via Lagas, and we've got things like the Environmental Record Centre, ERCIS, and even as we talk about, Kevin also mentioned the environmental impact of the spaceport. Actually, one impact of the spaceport is that it gives us access to an enormous amount of remote sensing data. And I think it's important that us as environmental intelligence professionals really frame our work within the context of that. Of course, space being very much in the public imagination following the successful SpaceX docking the other day. So we work together with a company called Vitamin Cornwall. They're part of a bigger Vitamin group. They're based in Truro, and we tendered for various companies, and Vitamin fitted the bill to build what was then called the hub, which became Lagas. So they've actually, one of the reasons they were chosen is because they've got a really good track record in GIS-based websites. So they did some work for BT, which is really impressive. Well, this is a bit of a low-res screenshot. So they did some work in mapping BT's fiber optic broadband. So they really do. We worked with a company that had a real legacy in environmental websites and spatial mapping. In terms of the name, I have to mention the name because the name is fascinating. So I contacted Cornwall Council's Cornish language department to get some advice on a potential name. So we wanted a name which was sort of interesting and told a story. A sort of Cornish word we thought would be really interesting. So this is a bit of a short list here. The confection here is that I've crossed them out as I rejected them, but of course I just wrote this afterwards. But so I went through all of these different ideas. Crescent was already taken by Crescent Kerner, but the one we sort of we kind of agreed on was Lagas, which is Cornish for eye. This is a screenshot from the Cornish dictionary. Lagas eye. Which we thought reflected centre or hub, and also provide a view on the environment. And actually, from this dictionary, a nice little definition there is en lagas anbes, in the limelight. We're putting the environment in the limelight. Probably less encouraging is lagas and ogan, which is a stinking mayweed. But let's focus on putting the environment in the limelight. And this is the home page. This is the page that greets you when you go on the website. We'll also see this live shortly when we do a website demo. I wanted a few screenshots of the website just in case my broadband didn't work, and I wanted to include them as part of the presentation. So this is a map of the businesses that TEVI has been working with. That's based on Lagas. There's got custom markers there designed in R with pop-ups that we can customize as well, and the logos at the bottom of the screen are entirely customizable as well. This is another map we produced as part of the Cornwall Sustainability Awards. Very similar sort of thing, and also this is kind of demonstrating that we can use this with business data based around creating heat maps, cluster maps. So this is a map of all the SMEs in Cornwall. So as we were doing some work to try and find the major areas of economic activity across Cornwall, kind of as you expect, you've got Falmouth, Truro, and Redruth, Camborne there, and St Austell. It really shows that we have this is quite a versatile platform. But probably most impressively and relevant to this meeting is the work that Sweep have been doing. So this is one of the lowland heath opportunity maps. I couldn't possibly explain how this data was generated. That is definitely the wizardry of Mr. Jonathan Mosedale. But this data it's a really smooth way of presenting this data, and really shows the opportunities here we have. And likewise, an urban change map here, which actually generated from Landsat data. And a landscape popularity data. This isn't. I'm sure Jonathan can tell us more about this, but it's based around social media activity, and really shows that there's opportunities here to use Lagas with a kind of human geography kind of data sets, and really shows that versatility here. So in terms of applications, we've Kevin mentioned the Forest for Cornwall. I put this slide in here because we've got an academic using the data, using Lagas there with Ilya's tweet from this morning, actually. We've got the Forest for Cornwall, which is integral to Lagas, works integral to informing that. And then there's a picture of me enthralling a pub full of people back when pubs existed at the Keg of Knowledge in Beowulf. So really, I think this slide sums up how the impact there is in policymakers, academics, and the general public. I mean, they're not really enthralled; they're just eating pizza and drinking beer, but still. And I'll just to say, and this is something that once again Kevin mentioned, there's been a better time to engage with nature as we go through this lockdown. We see the scenes such as these where nature appears to be reclaiming the streets. I mean, it was. I mean, probably not anymore. And there is this refocusing on health and nature, and maybe there is people looking again at this triangle, this relationship between the economy, society, and the environment. I mean, this is a great time for us to be engaged with that. And we actually had a really interesting event with Tevi recently, based around work connecting with nature during this strange period. And that was the Beach Guardian. It was a fascinating discussion on mental health and physical health. And people really do seem to be taking this issue more seriously now. Actually, there's a few stories there that I think we can all sort of reflect on there, that actually during the lockdown there has been this emphasis on nature, and a lot of cities, for instance, are looking to instigate bike lanes. That's Leicester there in the top left corner, a pop-up bike lane. I know for a fact some friends in Bristol, that Bristol Council are looking at mass pedestrianisation of Bristol city centre. In London, they're doing this as well. It seems that there's been a real focus on changing the world hopefully changing the world for the better in terms of the environment. And I think, as I say, there's no better time for us to be sharing our environmental intelligence and our environmental data, and that's really the world in which Lagas sits. And that's about it from the presentation. So I just thought now I would exhibit Lagas. This is where my browser crashes. But, just wait, give me a second to my incredibly old computer to stop showing that and show a different window. I would stress as well that Lagas is live now, so you just go to lagas.co.uk. As Kevin says, it is a totally accessible platform. Okay. So in theory, you should be able to see that. Yeah. So this is the home page, as I mentioned, and the structure of Lagas is such that it's got the mapping section, which I've just alluded to. We've got the a live feed section, which is kind of under construction, but we do have a test feed on there. My friend and colleague Kyle Roskilly is working, and Vicky Smith are working on a network of cameras based at locations of businesses through the Tevi project, where businesses really want to find out where this fascinating wildlife is, and we want to install live cameras there. We're hoping to. We've got the resources and links section, which is going to have a lot of information on it about Cornwall's environmental growth strategy, potentially toolkits as we go forward, and also a login section where perhaps if if an organisation wants to create private maps, then we can do that and host them on there and put them behind a password. But I'll quickly start off by going into the mapping tools. So we all love. Of course, this is going to be incredibly slow because that is the nature of my broadband. Yeah, so one thing I just wanted to show you really, for instance, is an example of how Lagas works. So just before I showed you this this map of TEVI businesses, these are the businesses TEVI has worked with so far. But one thing I really wanted to do was create a map of TEVI case studies. For instance, this map brings up a bubble with all the data there and a link which opens up to the TEVI website showing a full case study. And I think this is an example of something that the ESI could get involved with in showing case studies of other ESI work, other ESI projects. I mentioned this just really shows how many maps we already have on there, and I mentioned the opportunity mapping, and this is the sort of data that we have here. Again, this is Jonathan's data, and he's best placed to explain it. But I think the sort of smoothness of this really shows how versatile this platform is and can be. Yeah. So, but so if we get to so actually, I want to show you the streams bit. So this is sort of a bit of an experimental, but this really shows another aspect of our of Lagas in terms of its ability to sort of the broadness of its appeal. We wanted to create these live feeds which really emphasize Cornwall's natural environment. And if we're talking about environmental growth, we want to show examples of this wonderful environment and how we can how businesses are engaging with it. We don't have many yet, but we have this one from Senan, which is live. It's a bit of a demo one. So it's a live stream of an incredibly overcast Senan Cove, located at Atlantic Holiday Cottage. But like I say, my colleague Kyle is working with I think around 20 businesses to install cameras. So we'll have cameras located across Cornwall, showcasing landscapes and wildlife, and that will hopefully generate interest in Lagas outside of the sort of very sort of like specialist areas of environmental data. And the resources, I don't think we've got any on there. Oh, we've got a few things on there so far. We've got links to various projects. We've got links to URCAS, UN Sustainable Development Goals, TEVI, of course, and of course the Cornwall's Grow Nature Toolkit, which is so relevant to this and the environmental growth strategy, because this is a way that the general public can engage with the environmental growth strategy. And that's about it for now, I think. As you can see, it's we have a feedback button on there as well, of course. So if you were to click that, it would send me an email. So you can provide any kind of feedback in terms of any kind of data you would like to see on there. But really, the main area I'd like to sort of move this kind of meeting in is a discussion. So I was wondering if anybody has any, if we can sort of open the floor in a way to a discussion. I think that might be the best way to go forward. If anyone's got any questions, and we can, it sounds like an odd thing to have a question session right at the beginning, but the main section of the meeting was to be a discussion section.
Got a comment from Jane there.
Ah, yes, from Jane. It'd be good to integrate the live feed material to our ESI social media platforms. If people spot something exciting, can send people to Lagas and use images to share. People could certainly be directed towards Lagas. The sort of nature of the live feeds are that they are kind of ephemeral. They are we didn't really want it to be clipped. We want it to be something that people go onto and at a certain time of the day and think, oh, I wonder if there's anything there. I wonder if those herring gulls are nesting at this time of the day, and they can go and watch it. But it's certainly something we hope will drive people towards the website, and then discover the environmental growth strategy and the environmental growth agenda that we're all working towards. Oh yeah, actually, Jonathan's got a very very good point there. Bring it back to that. Yeah, so this is key to it really. In the maps, we actually have a. This is really important for sort of environmental data. We have an information button. Yeah, so this provides all the information about the maps. And also, we've of course this is an example of one with it, but what we also there is we have the ability to embed PDFs into this as well. So if you've got a methodology document you want to include with a map, I wonder if I can find one that's got one. One of these should do. Yeah, so this has got PDFs that you can download. And roll the information there, and really the back end is such that that it's very easy to upload this data and indeed to update it as well. Interestingly, when I'm sharing my screen, I can't see the comments box. It's interesting. There we go. Conversation. Yeah, as Kyle says, there is a potential for there will have motion detection. Kyle's sort of a camera guy, so we could potentially clip those if required.
Steve, can I chip in on there, because
Yep.
Amrita and Lydia have been working on, this is not my area of strong point, but social media and having an Instagram account where we would need images, and it's the kind of thing that there would be huge public interest in if there were some exciting things to flag up, and it would give us a window to get people onto the Lagas map. So I think if Kyle and you could think about that, taking shots from the live feeds and sending them direct onto our social media platforms, that could be great.
Yeah, I mean that'd be a really good application. So the social media is not my forte, but definitely something we can include on Twitter as well. Obviously we've got quite a strong Twitter community based around that. I noticed that Vicky, actually, who works with Kyle on the cameras, has commented that the cameras installed will be angled to avoid the potential of people walking into shot, and also there's going to be a sign put up so to share people there, so people don't sort of walk into frame accidentally. Ed makes an interesting comment there. It says, could you please outline potential opportunities for Lagas to feature social cultural content alongside the environmental data? I think that's a really important comment, Ed. I think that's sort of demonstrated a little bit by the map I created for the Cornwall Sustainability Awards. So this is where we can present data which is linked to the environmental growth strategy. It's linked to environmental growth, but is not as such environmental data. I think one of the key objectives of this work really is that we want to sort of show that link between the environment and society. I think it's absolutely imperative. I know we've actually been exploring some potential areas where we could work on mapping impact of COVID-19, for instance, in terms of businesses which have changed their business models. It's an example of a social aspect from this. Cultural content is actually a really interesting area, which is definitely one for the future, which is access to nature. That would be really interesting to map access to nature. I know there's been some work on that, and the sort of because I think it's a real challenge. in sort of areas which are affected by poverty, especially by being Cornwall. Let's not forget is an area which is a region of Europe which faces terrible poverty, and very often people that live in Cornwall don't access the fantastic nature we have here, which seems strange, but there are people that don't access the beach and they don't access the beautiful environments that we take for granted, and it'd be really good to map that actually in relation to socioeconomic data.
Steve, it's Dan here. I just wondered if I could jump in and answer George Dempster's question. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, sure.
George has just asked in the chat, how does Lagas support the economic development of the county? Which I think is a really important point, because being funded by ERDF, after all, which is primarily the economic development program, a business support program. And the reason that ERDF is paying is in order to generate as much use of this data and interrogation of this data by a community of users in order to support environmental growth, but also economic activity. The whole point of TEVI, of course, is that those two intentions and objectives are co-determinant. So I think that there are three main ways in which Lagas can support economic activity. One is through SMEs finding new ways of exploiting this data and using it, or even supplying data. And there are simple ways in which that can happen and are already happening. So there's new opportunities that arise from simply doing this. Another one is that it's essentially able to support a lot of spatial planning and development of where economic activity goes in the county in the future. And then ultimately, it's about underpinning, engaging with an understanding of nature and experiencing nature, which is the whole point of the environmental growth strategy in a way. Underpinning all of that is a key growth opportunity, particularly in sectors of the economy like the nexus between agri-tech, tourism, and food, and new kind of offerings that we need to create in that space economically for the county. So by kind of getting those businesses to engage with a site like Lagas and to play with the maps and understand their role in the county and in the environmental growth of the county, you're kind of supporting that whole shift towards those new business activities. So there's at least three ways, I think, in which Lagas will help sustainable economic growth.
Thanks for that, Dan. Yeah, it's absolutely. And obviously, this is been produced through TEVI, which is, as Dan says, is a project which is totally underwritten by this idea that a healthy environment and a healthy society and a healthy economy go together, and that is absolutely paramount for a lot of the work we do. In fact, all of it. Ilya asks a really interesting question there in the comments. It says it's a great platform for sharing environmental intelligence. Any thoughts on what information or maps you'd like to see up in the future, or do you envisage things will develop organically? Well, we've designed it so it can develop organically, so it is versatile. But a couple of things I'd love to see on Lagas are an emphasis on marine, so water quality, sort of impacts on the marine environment, absolutely really important. We've got some really great stuff from Sweep. It'd be great to get other sort of a marine sort of focused things from that. And also, I'd love to see some way of mapping the circular economy. This is something we're potentially working on through TEVI with a group called Circle Economy through a jobs monitor. The outputs of that could well be mapped, and it would be lovely to see that sort of data shared alongside environmental data, because I think it's really two sides of the same coin, and we should really be great to see that sort of data, and perhaps even see waste flows across the county, that sort of information. Well, Karen's got a great question, which is incredibly difficult to answer. It's about it's very interesting. Thanks for the presentation. I was wondering if there's a scope for plans to integrate products from automated satellite product generation via Google Earth Engine, for instance, processing satellite 2 image data for showing phenology, land cover. We also have another sweet project which is implementing some automatic workflows for Devon AOMB, which might also work well for Cornwall. Tree cover change using Sentinel data products from optical and SAR. Yeah, I mean, as I said, remote sensing is and will continue to be a really important part of environmental data. In terms of having maps that automatically update, is a really interesting challenge. At the moment, the way we run Lagas is that we upload maps. Whether there's a way of developing an API that can take data and automatically upload it, it's a possibility. I know that Kyle's looking into live sensor data. So that's if we could do something similar with satellite data, it'd be really interesting. There's be enormous advances in satellite technology, which we could use to get almost live land cover data about Cornwall. It'd be really good. Jane says it would be good to source data from colleagues in the ESI and beyond to map our collective environmental intelligence, which includes a social and community environment. Can we encourage people to send ideas to me? Please do. Yeah, that would be great. It'd be great to see. I'm really interested as to the ways people see this and how they see it as relevant to their various projects. Because obviously I work on TEVI, so my focus is on TEVI. But I mean, whenever I talk to people at the ESI, or virtually or literally at the ESI, you hear about these fantastic projects and how they have so many links together. And everything we do is guided by this environmental intelligence work and this focus on the environment. It's a really, and as Kevin said in his intro, there's few institutions like it really. So it'd be really good to show that on via maps, and we map our impact. As an example, I'm doing a survey looking at the impact of COVID-19 on community and voluntary orgs in Cornwall at the moment, and we have postcodes and/or geographic there in the data set. So these can be mapped, showing impact in a different way. They could absolutely. We could also map, for instance, community action, community activism. So looking at the groups like Wren in Weybridge and the Chasewater Community Energy Group, things like that, to show how Cornwall's society is reacting to the climate change emergency.
It would be interesting to look at volunteer data from the Wildlife Trust as well, so you could map if they have data about where people are volunteering on all of their sites. Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing.
And that would also lead really well into this idea of access to nature, because people volunteering in local woodlands, it's not only for the benefit of nature, but also the benefit of the people that do it. And for instance, Deverchoy's Wood in down Ponsonif. I don't know where it's on that one. It's a place where you can volunteer. It's a Cornwall Wildlife Trust site. There's a business there called Working Woodlands that work on TEVI. Two really great guys that run it, and people go there to volunteer, not because they explicitly want to improve the wood, but they do that. But they also do it because it's a social and social activity which improves their mental and physical health. So I'd love to see that sort of thing mapped, actually. Yeah. Yes, Kyle's actually provided some information there regarding the to Roz regarding the from the cameras. Yeah, covering GDPR. Yeah, and the development of an API as well. What have we got here? It's an interesting comment from Sarah Ashton. I wonder if it's worth looking at collaborating with the Institute of Data Science and AI based in Streatham. You may be able to help develop some of the work that Karen suggests. They have funding calls periodically to support the work of IDSI AI fellow to collaborate on work like that. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I think if we can sort of communicate how powerful a tool this is, then those sort of options arise. And it'd be really good to sort of to have further to demonstrate this to Streatham and sort of I think we're actually working on a I think the Ed is working on a meeting, an environmental intelligence summit, I think, which is potentially going to be involved in that. I think it's going ahead anyway. It was going to go ahead in person at the Eden Project, but obviously that can't happen now. But I think it may be online now. Should be talking with the Southwest Excellence Centre of Excellence in Satellite Applications, ESA IAP, who could help. Actually got a meeting with the Catapult satellite Catapult.
That was Conrad.
Yeah, Conrad. Yeah, it's on Friday to discuss possibilities with satellite data. Yeah, so that's definitely an area that that is really exciting, in a number of ways. Amanda Goodwin asks, might Lagas be able to create a more seamless interaction between reports and maps? For example, Tevi is creating many reports, and I think they could benefit from the dynamism of Lagas. For example, we've just published a report on advanced mooring system trials around the UK, and how successful they have been in regrowing seagrass beds. Could we link the content in the report into the map, seeing as the report is hosted online and free to access? So it could be linked to the map. You can link to a particular map on Lagas. So each map has got its own URL, so you can link to it. I'm not sure if you can embed it. I've actually not tried that, but you certainly can link to it. And also, I mean, if some of that data would be to, I mean, with the seabed work, of course, that's sort of public data. But sometimes I know that Jonathan was working with a group who wanted their data to be their map to be just for them. So he wanted the report to be not public. So in that situation, you can also apply a password. So it's definitely a possibility. People at work, Ed says, people at Working Woodlands also supply other local businesses such as Studio Makers, Studio Haran. So SMEs link to each other based on our environment. Absolutely, and wouldn't it be great to map those links in the context of circular economy? So Working Woodlands is the group I mentioned in Perrin and Wurtle. So they provide a social benefit, they provide an environmental benefit, and they also provide an economic benefit at the same time to local businesses. Studio Haran is about 1 kilometre, I think, from that wood. Their farm actually backs onto it, and they make fantastic furniture. And they're actually trying to make really cheap furniture as well to take on IKEA. Yes. Ed confirms that we're looking to run an environmental intelligence online event this summer alongside our colleagues in Devon. That should be really good, actually, because bring together lots of different groups that are all working towards these same goals. I look forward to that. It's going to be great. Stefano, I wonder if we should look at Lagas as an example of 21st century social infrastructure. It works more like a social knowledge sharing platform than an inventory of data and maps. Are you happy for this to happen? That's a really interesting question. It's a fascinating question, actually. It's 21st century social infrastructure. I was initially I really wanted to avoid the social network sort of thing. Not only because I have an aversion to social networks, but also I don't know. It's sort of I mean, that is potentially a way of delivering it, but I wanted to focus more on the data, I guess. But I think if we have different aspects of the way the environment works with society, if we look at that, then it is potentially a hub for that. Yeah, as Kyle says, that map, the report on the PDF can be linked in the resources section of the map, so it's downloadable from Lagas. That'd be really interesting to do, actually. Yeah, Jonathan, another excellent suggestion from Jonathan. He says, let's see the back end. It's a good idea. It should be easily done. Just share my screen again. So there you should be able to see the kind of empty screen that says dashboard and manage products. So basically what you do is, if you want to upload a map, you go into products, and these are the list of maps that we've uploaded. So I wonder if I can do a demo one. So you choose a category, maybe microclimate, for instance, and give it a title. And a slug, which is the short URL, and then a description. And then you choose whether you want it to be public, draft, or passworded. So public, and then you choose whichever format you want to upload in. So you've got KMZ or KML zip file, which is the ArcGIS shape file. It's exactly the same format you would use if you wanted to upload to ArcGIS Online. Interest in the ArcGIS Online has really found prominence recently with the whole coronavirus thing. I mean, with Johns Hopkins University using it and PHE, or RStudio. So, for instance, I will quickly upload one. You can choose the date it was updated. You can add notes if you like, and then you can enable or disable sponsor and affiliate settings. Choose whether you want the user to be able to collapse those, and these are the sponsors we have set up. So, for instance, you might want University of Exeter, I don't know, NERC, and sweep. And then you can attach a document and then simply add the product. And it's I actually have no idea what I've just uploaded, by the way. It could be anything. So if we go back to and then that one that I just uploaded, which was called Test 2, is now there. So that's immediately. Oh, and it's a map of renewable energy resources. So that's kind of how straightforward it is to upload a map to it. It took about a minute. But yeah, I mean, furthermore for this, so you've got different categories, and you can add categories on there and change the order they appear in the menu. In terms of sponsors and these partner organizations, it was really important that we sort of got this right, because there's so many different ones for different projects, and we wanted to make it so that you could just select one from a list. But if you had another one, you can easily add a new sponsor and upload the correct image, and that's there. And you can upload a document here, which is, for instance, the report that Amanda mentioned, or the further information methodology documents. There's an accounts section there. And there's a area here to manage the feeds, the live video feeds. Brand new, 4th of June. Hot off Kyle's press. And then resources as well, resources and links. So it's we've sort of wanted this to be as easy to use as possible. And the actual editing of Lagas is done through WordPress. So it's just a sort of It's just a very, as you would expect, a normal WordPress site. So yeah, hopefully that explains some of the nuts and bolts of it in not too excruciating detail. Where's the comments section? Jane says, I'm thinking you could use the map to promote new markets for the TEVI businesses that are promoting sustainability. I was involved in something similar for living wage business in the past. You could have a Lagas Christmas shopping list for all staff and students at the university. Not very intellectual, but a good way of building relationships. True, yeah. I mean, there's an idea that's been knocking around for a while with TEVI is the idea of a certification. Or a map of businesses. I mean, of course, we've got a map of businesses that work with TEVI. We've got a case studies and best which really acts as a directory of best practice, really. And if a business is located on that TEVI map, then they've worked on TEVI, or they've worked in other university projects, potentially something like Marine Eye. Maybe that could form the basis of some kind of mark. I'm not sure how that would work, but that'd be a really, really good way of doing that. I know that's actually happened in areas like the Peak Districts. They've got an environmental mark which shows that businesses that are operating there sort of adhere to certain principles around protecting the environment. Oh, actually, Ed's answered that as well. We already work with Ethics Plus to support them, making their procurement more local, more diverse. Yeah, absolutely. And Dan's commented as well. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. As Dan says, that really emphasises then that working with environmental growth does improve your business. And you see similar things with projects like B Corp. So if you walk down Falmouth High Street, you'll see Finisterre has proudly got the B Corp logo in the window, and a few others have got similar things. Maybe we could have a standard which says that you're helping to contribute to Cornwall's environmental growth. Thanks for coming, Sarah. Stefano, please allow me to think big. Please do, Stefano. If you start codifying the environment, nature, society relations in this way, it's similar to putting oral language into written language and organizing it and making it accessible. Historically, this is like founding a library in ancient Mesopotamia. That certainly is thinking big. I like it. It's the philosophical basis of Tevi and Lagas. It's excellent. And that's actually, it really is about we do have a role in codifying nature and the environment into language and into society, I think. Right now, especially, as we sort of rebuild after COVID-19. Like it, Dan. Yes, Stefan, great point. SME assessment tool. Yeah, so I mentioned Circle Economy collaboration we have with them, developing an assessment tool with them. We can certainly link that from Lagas. Whether it can be hosted is another question. I think they've got their own hosting options, but certainly it would be great to direct businesses towards that through Lagas. Yeah, Jane, absolutely. I would love to see. A brand which reflected Cornwall's environmental growth. I think we've got a similar thing with the CSAs, Cornwall Sustainability Awards, but there is so much appetite for that. There really is, and we see that in things like the refill campaign of free tap water across Cornwall and beyond. And there really is a lot of businesses really want to engage with that. We find through Tevi, and they are proud of the work they do, and we want them to sort of benefit from that. Grace, you want to use this to log the impact of Tevi where changes have been made by the SMEs and partners you work with. Yes, Grace. I did sort of show a case studies map which I generated, which is sort of the story of businesses that have worked with Tevi. I've just done that for the ones where that have been involved in funding for now, but we could certainly do that for all of them and to effectively show examples of best practice. I think it'd be really interesting. Yes, yeah. As Dan says, we've got a few projects with Circle coming up that are really going to be really interesting in terms of assessing businesses. It'd be great to see that feeding into some kind of certification. Ben says it might be worth considering another update. Absolutely, in a few months' time. Yeah, definitely. I mean, as Kevin said right at the start, it's an evolving project. It's something which goes forward. So we've got things like sweep feeding into it heavy. It's something which will evolve, and hopefully with the with your input, fellow ESI people, we can sort of build a fantastic thing here. And we've built the platform, but we just need the applications for it, which has started. Yeah, a sip of water, extremely dry. Yeah. I seem to have gone through all the questions. So if there are any more, do ask them. I think we were scheduled until 3:30, but we can always finish early. Yeah, it'd be great, Jay. It'd be great to promote it. ESI website. Ben asks, are there comparable sites used elsewhere? There's not really anything that comparable with this. There's various websites that map environmental issues, as I sort of alluded to in the presentation. Things like Magic. Cornwall Council's own site is really good. Actually, I was amazed at how good it was. Cornwall Council's online mapping tool is really good, but it doesn't really sort of cover the same areas that we cover. There's a lot of regional examples of things. But they tend to be quite compartmentalized and siloed. For instance, there's a map of invasive plant species. I can't remember who hosts it, but it's a nationwide one. So there's little things like that about little issues, but I don't think there's one which covers this particular sphere of environmental growth. Grace, that's an extremely good question, of one which I cannot answer. Any other counties or countries, Ben? Wow. Yeah, again, not really on a county level. On a country level. So what there are in certain parts of the US, especially, actually, the city level maps and systems which emphasize, for instance, water quality. I know there's a few that cover water quality, but to have this sort of wide range of different issues all focused around the one sort of theme, I really don't think there is. But I mean, let's think outside the box. There's no reason why Lagas could not be national. It has the ability to have an enormous environmental growth opportunity map covering the entirety of the UK. I'll let Jonathan make that. Karen, thank you for coming. It's great to hear from you. And Jane, thanks. Yeah, it's absolutely imperative that it continues. Like as Kevin says, we re-emphasize that it's the start of something. It really is. I would say if people have to nip off, then feel free. I do. My email is always open. And my email address is s.low2@exeter.ac.uk, but you probably know it anyway.
If people are going to go, I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Steve, and Kevin and all the team. It's been really good to have this session, and we should definitely follow up with all these ideas, integrate Lagas into what we're all doing, and think of it more as a collective going forward. But thank you very much. It's really exciting.
Thank you, Jane. It's been really good to do this. And obviously, thanks to everyone. Thanks to Kevin for great intro. Summed it up brilliantly. This sort of environmental growth agenda. And yeah, thanks for coming, everybody. Yeah, as Ed says, that's my email address. But yeah, and thanks to everyone. And Kyle, Kyle's sensor network is a joy to behold. It's fantastic. Kyle and Vicky. And the work they're doing on the LoRaWAN is going to be really integral to this work as it goes forward, and I think a lot of our environmental work as well. Yeah. Okay.
Well done, Steve. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dan.
Excellent work. Really good.
Right. So I think that probably covers it then. Like I say, do email me. Yeah, I will answer emails. Thank you very much. And contact me on Teams as well. Thank you, everybody. Cool. I'll draw it. Thank you.
Cheers now. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.